Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. On this week's show, we have a guest from the other side of the world, Dr. G. Rex Kruhly. Welcome to Poddin My Noggin. How are you?
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, sir. So where are you exactly right now?
I'm in Pattaya City on the coast in Thailand. I moved to Thailand, it'll be 11 years ago now, and I live in Chiang Mai, but I'm in this city specifically because there's two chiropractors and soft tissue guys that are fixing me up after my car crash last March.
So we're looking at less than a year ago you were in a car crash.
Yeah, a real bad one.
Okay, but you are alive, so this is good.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yeah, that's very good.
You are alive and you are in proximity to two experts who can help you thrive in your healing process. So these are positives, right? So
Sure.
You're coming to us today from Thailand, and you're coming to us, so you've had a pretty interesting life. I don't read up on guests prior to the show because I don't like to formulate questions. I prefer to have conversations, okay?
I'm the same way.
Perfect. So I'm looking at it and I'm computing things. So, you told me that you had nearly 60 years of experience in martial arts. That's a lot of years in martial arts, right?
Yeah,
When
it's
did
been
you
my
start?
life's work. I began training at the age of 13, and I was a professional deshi under Kushida by the age of 18. And then I put in 50,000 hours on the mats in Aikido alone, and then another 26 years of specifically sword on top of that. And then I trained also for urban warfare with tactical firearms. So I'm a martial specialist.
That is incredible. And so pop back just really. So that was at age 13, but you had mentioned that at age 6, you were emotionally abandoned by family. Can you explain that part?
Yeah, I was the first son for my dad.
Yes.
And he was so proud, I had an older sister by 9 years, and I never fit in with regular society. And I knew what my mission was. By the time I was 3, I was already drawing the diagrams of how to save the people and the earth and all those kinds of things. When I got into school at the age of 6, they failed me. The older lady that was the teacher hated me. When they failed me, back in those days in Windsor, Ontario, believe it or not, they used to publish in the Windsor Star, the city newspaper, the grades of the kids. So they publicly humiliated my father that his son, Dad was a really smart man, proud man, his Grant Kruhly failed. And Dad didn't know how to emotionally handle that. And so he just shut right off, and so did everyone else. So emotionally, I went from being the exalted son to ice cold. And that's a massive, massive shock. And right at the end of my 4th program, so I'm still 6 years old, so the subconscious mind is still running the show. And all of a sudden, I'm not loved or wanted anymore. And so I at the age of 7, when the frontal cortex of your brain kicks in. Now I'm walking into a school where I'm humiliated completely. The family doesn't, everything's ice cold, and I don't understand nothing.
Of course.
So, so that's how I got started.
Do you mind if I ask what year that was?
What year? I only know
Approximately?
the ages. I'm 67 now, so I was 6.
And
I'm not
you
good
were
at math.
6 in 54. No, 64. 64 or 65.
Yeah, because I was born in 1956.
1956. So, okay, wait now. So, yeah, so 62. So, the year of 62. Published in the Windsor Star,
Yeah,
Windsor,
believe it or
Ontario, the
not.
grades of all the children.
Yeah,
And this took the wind out of your very proud father.
yeah. He's was a great, fine man. But if you think of someone like a Charles Bronson, he's Polish, grew up in the Great Depression, and just very proud. Doesn't have any. He doesn't. Dad didn't have any kind of emotional evolution that way. He doesn't know what to do.
I mean, and a lot of men. That's true for a lot of men, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Period. And it's not. And one of the things I always say also is that it's not necessarily their fault, because this is how a society and our nuclear families and all of those subscriptions we get from birth till through all those stages you were speaking about is that men were not supposed to emote, grin and bear it, toughen up, man up. Like that's the subscription you're fed right from being a child. So this was what you're dealing with at 6 and 7 years old, but then you find, I would imagine, some form of an outlet in martial arts, a sense of belonging.
Yeah, what happened was I have a very powerful longing for manhood. And so I started to search for another father, somebody who would acknowledge me or admire me. And I used to watch the movies, and I always noticed that the guy that everybody liked was the toughest and was the hero. So I became the toughest fighter in the school. By the time I was certainly by grade 8, nobody can take me, and that remained like that for the rest of my life. Now there's lots of men that can take me, but I'm lucky that way. I never was defeated. I became one of the highest paid bouncers in Detroit, in the rough side of town, and all that kind of stuff for years to test myself. I never did get a chance to, because I was in Canada, to become a professional military man. But later on, as a martial artist in Silicon Valley, I taught military. So
you mentioned that.
My way of becoming a man and earning respect was through the martial craft. And luckily, instead of practicing garbage like most of the martial art world is, I became the apprentice of a real master from Japan. And I don't want you to relate me with the idiots you see on television, and they have funny looking pajamas and kick watermelon. I don't have nothing to do with that world. If you want to know my world, you can watch the movie The Last Samurai. I'm related in my lineage to the men who charged in that last charge. Those were the Aizuhan samurai at the Meiji Shin at 1868. That movie is based on a true story. And you can think of me like the guy you see that beats up Tom Cruise with a sword. So that's a real martial. I'm a samurai based. I carry 3 samurai lineages, and it's the real deal. It's not children's play, So I don't have nothing to do with sports martial art or trophies or nothing like that.
It was all about
Strictly
the
Zen.
practice and the discipline
Yeah,
itself.
it's very, very formal. And I was unlike most people. I don't practice it for me. So I'm trained to carry the craft for the next generation. So the word samurai comes from the word saburo, which means to serve. So samurai were servants, and I learned how to. I was an uchideshi, so I take care of the master personally. So all my life was trained for vigilance of how to serve people, how to take care of people, how to train people, not to be a tough guy. Being tough just happens automatically. You can't be weak and get through and do that, But it's not the purpose. I don't have the purpose was never for me to be some kind of a champion or something at all. Not at all.
So I want to just notate real quick, though, that you showed sort of an immense amount of vulnerability a few minutes ago by
Can you?
expressing.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you well enough. What? Say that again.
Oh, I apologize. So I want to notate that just a few minutes ago, you had expressed an immense amount of vulnerability
Hmm.
when you were talking about chasing manhood and looking for another father. I commend that, and I think that that's really powerful in itself, right? That you can speak that reflectively on your experiences. You had so like you have done a lot. When like I think you told me 2 to 5 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, 365 days a year. More like 5 hours a day
Oh,
generally, but at least
trying to,
at a very minimum, will be 2 hours.
that's a lot of training and a
Yeah,
lot of discipline.
yeah, yeah.
So, and then you also said that you had 50,000 hours of Aikido. Was it Aikido?
Aikido. Yeah, you say
Okay,
Aikido.
Aikido. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. Um, so you're right. I think obviously that if you're doing that and you're doing it as much as you are, you become tough
yeah,
mentally and
yeah.
physically. You
Yes,
can't be weak and go through that kind of endurance for all that
yeah.
time. But like I'm only seeing you from shoulders up, but you don't look like a bulky dude. But I don't think you need to be a bulky dude if you have all of that experience and training.
When I was in combat shape, so if you take me in my 30s and up to about 45, um, I'm tall and thin, but my leg press in the weight room is 1,250 pounds on the 15th set, and I used to do like 1,000 push-ups a day, and I was a fairly I can rock and roll. If it comes down to some kind of the military people wouldn't come to train under me to learn how to fight if I was a wimp. You know what I mean? And I train
And
I train SWAT and people like that.
you did this in, like you said, in Silicon Valley.
That's right. My dojo
Where
was the Dosatsu Ken dojo, just down from Moffett Field, and I used to have the Air Force people there, and NASA was there. I trained some of the scientists there, a lot of Silicon Valley execs, and then people from Force Recon, Palo Alto SWAT, all of that. Everybody they train. I wasn't commercial, so it was a private dojo, professional dojo.
okay,
It was a
that's
real deal.
that is very fascinating and very cool as well. Until we get to the next part where you tell me that you lost everything.
Yeah,
What happened?
the landlord died right at 2000. It was my big ceremony at Christmas, and then all of a sudden he had a heart attack and died. And his son wanted the dojo. My dojo was huge. We built it. My students all built it out for me. So it was a we redesigned a factory. Well, anyway, he wanted that, so he broke the lease illegally, and I was suddenly homeless because I lived in the dojo. Within 2 weeks, I lost everything. He just, it was unbelievable how fast, and I had no clue what was going on. And I was suddenly homeless, and everything was gone. Just it was, and I went into a kind of shock because I didn't think anything could ever take away my dojo. It was my whole life's dream since I was a child to build that. And it was also my way. We say in Japanese, giri. Giri means, giri is your duty, and on is what you owe. You owe a debt. So the debt is for me to repay my teachers and all his teachers by teaching. So that's what I live for. And it was all gone suddenly. And a nice old man took me in, who became a really dear friend of mine, Stu Hoffer, a nice old fella. And he saved me. He saved at least my dignity, gave me a place to stay. And then his family rallied a lawyer who took my case on contingency because I had nothing. And that lawyer was really smart, and he wiped out those guys. It took 2 years, but we defeated them. And then I took the money that we got, and I decided to become a doctor, a licensed doctor. So because I didn't know what to do, I was in limbo for 2 years, and that's when my anger and rage started. So I was walled right up, and I also started to study the dark side of martial art to be a professional killer for lethal engagement of mass. So it's like the kind of martial art, instead of Aikido, you're going to break their neck in half or tear them to pieces. So I was training like that, and I was also concurrently training under Yagyu Sensei in Japan, which is completely 180 degrees opposite. One side really ugly, and your heart has to close, and the other side very noble and just pure Zen. And it was Yagyu Sensei himself. I had gone to see him in Japan, and he took me aside and said, you're becoming. I'm worried about you. You're becoming sick, because when you train for that kind of ugly craft, or just to be a professional killing machine, there's no one to kill. There's no enemy. No ninjas are coming through the windows. And what happens is, it's like you're all dressed up for dinner and nowhere to go. And that internal, the mindset to destroy a human target is ugly. It's not nice. So it was all my rage and everything. And Yagyu Sensei pulled me out of that. And I left that completely and pursued only the sword from then on. So that was nice. And but I lost my divine connection with the divine for about a good 20 years. And when I went to become a chiropractor, the chiropractic schools have been completely and utterly destroyed by the pharmaceutical industry. They bought them all out. And I was so upset with what I found there, because I already knew some of the finest chiropractors in the world. I studied under George Goodhart himself. When I broke my back in half when I was 27, they fixed me with no operation. And then when I went to the colleges and found that all that garbage and crap, I was extra angry. And I couldn't stand what I was seeing. So I developed enormous, thick cataracts from epigenetics. Meanwhile, the anger in me was getting more and more and more. And I had since I was a boy, I had a little pocket of fat, like underneath the skin on my right chest. So epigenetics, that developed into a cancer, and they just cut that out of me. It was perfectly perfect margins. They just cut it out of me in the office, and that was over. But that was the last of my real anger or rage. That was 2014. So I graduated as a doc in 2006, and we moved. My wife and I moved to from Texas, where I graduated, to Georgia. And then I had because I'm a consciousness model chiropractor, I should have moved back to the West Coast, because in the East Coast area like that, consciousness models don't work. What they want is strictly snap, crackle, pop, physical adjusting. So I had no success at all, and then I was even madder. Luckily, I was studying umpteen different kinds of healing, and I had a Reiki master there that I started studying Tibetan Reiki. And when he got a new home, not far from me, so I went over there, and he took me upstairs. He was a very devoted Buddhist and studied directly under the Dalai Lama, and a very, very fine young man. And when I walked into his prayer room, I was instantly reconnected with my divine through Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche of Tibet. And I took my empowerments through him, and that reinstated me. So that was about 2012, or 20, maybe 2009. But from 2000, when they took away my dojo, until then, I was disconnected from the divine. I was in a state of rage.
More about that in a minute, but what I want to say though is really interesting, because when you were talking about the rage and the anger and your sensei,
that right? That's right.
Okay,
sensei means
perfect.
Teacher.
So sensei pulled you aside, and then you started working with the sword. So like, metaphorically, it's almost like that anger had turned into a cancer and you surgically removed it with the sword. But then you went on to say that you had a spot of cancer that was also surgically removed, and that was the last of your anger.
Yeah, that was the last of that type, because the anger, the message was real clear. Either the anger goes or I'm going to die. It'll kill me.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Okie doke.
This month, join our Valentine's Quilt Sweepstakes, hosted by Poddin My Noggin and made by CK Sims. Enter for the chance to win the Valentine's Quilt and matching pillow by subscribing to Poddin My Noggin's YouTube channel. The sweepstakes will run from February 1st to February 28th, when the winner will be announced. Additionally, you can receive 10 extra entries by purchasing the Easy Beginners Digital Quilt Pattern Valentine's Edition. Check out the sweepstakes rules below and access the link in the description to enter today.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? one that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles. Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everyone. We are talking to Dr. Rex Kruhly, who's currently on the other side of the world in Thailand. And before the break, we've been talking about his life leading up to, say, approximately 2014. All of his immense experience with the real deal martial arts, not the sporty, filmy kind that we see on TV. The losing of your dojo and that sort of thing. So you had gone through a lot by the 2014 mark. And so then you decided to move to Thailand, correct?
Well, not exactly. I mean, I never dreamed of ever living in Southeast Asia. I'm Japanese trained. And the difference between Southeast Asia and Japan is like the difference between black and white. But I didn't know that. I thought Asia was Asia. I didn't know. And the reason I ended up here, my life was rewritten in the sacred chambers at Dr. Rossi McClellan's home. Rossi is a very advanced woman with a very high consciousness and was given the empowerments to host sacred chambers. So a sacred chamber process means there are 3 rooms, and when you go there, each room has its own purpose, and you can interface with the divine directly, very, very powerfully. So I had gone there. I used to take sacred chamber process sometimes twice a week. There were 2 of them at that time in Atlanta. And I had become I had entered oneness under Sriyama Bhagavan, the great avatars, and they're the ones that empower the sacred chambers. So anyway, in that sacred chamber process, I was mad because everything was so rough, and my marriage was a disaster. Everything was a disaster. And irregardless of my skills, my titles and all that stuff, I could never make a single dime. And I didn't know, at that time I was learning about cognitive dissonance under my great doctor that I apprenticed under was Larry Hobersky. I apprenticed with him for 8 years. So anyway, she told me, when you go into the second chamber, express your anger directly to the divine. So I did. And they rewrote my we call the 5th program. 5th program, there's 10 programs that run human life or everything. And the 5th program starts at age 7 until whatever age you are now. So I didn't know they rewrote anything. I was just expressing my anger. Then you go into the 3rd chamber and take a blessing. And on my way home, it was about a 45-minute drive to get home from her house. My state started to change, And by the time I got home, I was just in a state of like a causeless joy, haven't any idea why, and just filled with all kinds of joy. And in my memory, I believe that was the same day. Tammy was at work. She worked in the hospital. And my divine usually will talk to me through birds of prey, the great hawks or eagles. And I'm pretty sure that's the same day because I was sitting out on the front and I was in this state of just like singing joy, And it's not occurring to me. And this big, beautiful hawk comes down, almost like it's floating down, is the way my memory is. And he spread his wings out, looking at me on the ground in our yard, because we lived in a forest on Lake Lanier. And then he took off. So anyway, I called up Rossi and I said, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just in this state of joy and happiness. And she said, oh, there's been something occurred, and something has been rewritten for you. It's something big. And it was only just a few months later, I just suddenly, spontaneously decided to move to Thailand. So I was meant to come here, and I had no money at all. I got a little loan for 5,000. I just had a visitor's visa, and I just flew straight to Thailand. And I had called up some guy who was supposed to be from Australia, running a Buddhist camp, like a resort up in the mountains off of Chiang Mai. When I got there, it was all fake. He was fake. Everything was fake. It was all just nonsense. And I said to my buddy, Dr. Terry Hill, I said, what the hell do I do now? I only have a 3-month visitor's visa. This guy was supposed to provide me with a job and paperwork and all that stuff. I don't know what to do. He says, oh, just go teach English. I said, I don't know how to teach English. And I don't know how to teach English. And I just prayed to the divine. And within 2 weeks, I had a job working under Johnny Chumpakan way up in the mountains in Isan on the other side of Thailand. And now Johnny works for me. Johnny's my admin for depth healing. So anyway, I got started like that. And immediately that when I arrived in Thailand, I've had nothing but divine support. And now I serve people all over the entire world with depth healing. I taught English for 3 years. Worst English teacher Thailand ever saw. No idea what the hell. But anyway, I did that, and then I got my proper visas to be here, and I live an enchanted life in Thailand. Very happy. Have a beautiful lady that's my girl, and I live and serve people all over the world.
So let's talk about that for a second. So like you kind of went to Thailand blindly, on faith, essentially.
Completely
right?
blindly. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Somehow, when you got there, what you thought was going to be your path wasn't your path, but it did show itself over time. And then you created depth healing technology.
Yeah, I've been building depth healing since the divine showed me I could do a distance healing was about 2012. Okay. When they first showed me that because I didn't know that all of depth healing is all channeled. You can't learn depth healing. And the man who showed me the quantum field and how it operates is Dr. Larry Habersky, who I apprenticed under for 8 years. I apprenticed under 3 great master doctors. The others are 4 years, like Bob Rakowski and then Jeff Britton. But the biggest one is Dr. Habersky, and he taught me the quantum field. So, and then the divine showed me how to do all of the mystic side of everything is all through the divine directly. So I'm a channel.
So for people at home, and even myself, I have very loose understanding of what it is you do. Now, I will mention that when I first popped into the studio today, I could hear you having a conversation with someone else. I heard a brief snippet of it, and then I removed my earbuds because I thought I am absolutely in this moment unintentionally eavesdropping on a very personal moment between you and a client. So I just removed them. I was like, so explain to us what it is, depth healing technology. You say quantum field, like give us sort of like a obviously you can't do it justice in like say 10 minutes, but like give us a high level sort of layman explanation as to what it is that you do and how you're able to do that.
Okay, let me so a couple of things so you understand the context. So, by modern science now, peer-reviewed science, the subconscious mind runs 95% of your life. And the subconscious mind, we'll try to make a long story short, subconscious mind is starts in your third program, third, fourth, and fifth. So it's your personal life. And it starts to form at conception, and its base is finished by the age of 7 when the frontal cortex, the frontal part of your brain where you think, activates. Now, the subconscious mind records, there's 2 schools of thought, records at a rate of 40 million bits of information per second, 24/7, or 4 billion bits of information per second is one of the new schools of thought. If we use the first one, 40 million bits, by the age of 7, I believe the math comes out to something like 10 quadrillion bits of information that is in your subconscious strata, and that is your database to run your life. And in there, it gives you, it's all the software. So if you're like a computer, all of the software, that's what it is. And then the frontal cortex is like when you type something on the keyboard, you go to Google and you type in a question, and then it goes to the cloud, which is a morphic field, where the information is encoded in photons of light, and it brings back the answer. Well, that's how you live. Anything and everything, and your frontal cortex is very weak. It only processes 40 bits of information a second. And anything that it encounters, and it only encounters what it's looking for, nothing else. And it goes to that subconscious database, and that tells you whether it's good, bad, right, wrong, you like it, you don't like it, it's dangerous, it's not dangerous, everything. And all of that gives you your frequency. Your frequency gives you your life, your death, your friends, everything. The universe runs by resonance. And all of that data, it gets all entangled into patterns. What do I do? I can access your subconscious mind with surgical precision. And then when I go in there I use 2 types of frequencies, destructive and constructive interference waves. And you tell me what your problem is, whether it's a physical problem, a disease, you're hurt, doesn't make any difference what it is. If you have a financial problem, you have a problem, let's say you have a broken heart, you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, all I do is go straight in and I disassemble it and I remove it. It's gone, period. Relative to the question, that's a very key point. You got that takes time to understand. But relative to the question, I will completely remove that, period. And then with constructive interference waves, I'm taking the negatives down and out, and the constructive builds your consciousness and your field up. So as I'm working on you, I'm raising consciousness and building you. And who decides all this? I decide nothing. I'm a relay station. That's what I'm empowered to do. I have empowerments through India and through Tibet and through Japan. The empowerments, all that means is that I can channel it. And your body or the client's body, the client's consciousness chooses everything. I choose nothing. It's none of my business. That's the problem with medical people. They make a diagnosis and they make a decision. That's why they're the highest cause of death in the world. The trick is to be, your consciousness will tell me what needs to go, and it'll only, when you work with me, only what you can handle or what's available will show up. Just like he and I are talking, I didn't research him, he didn't research me, and we're just talking. live. That's real wisdom. When it's all rehearsed, it's nothing. Any idiot can rehearse a fancy speech or something. So when I meet the client, they tell me what's going on. Then I have them close their eyes. I ask, the secret is the question. They will repeat the question themselves. That opens up their files in that massive database. I find it directly and I deal with it. I remove it. And now what I want you to understand is when you have a problem or an issue, it's a huge complex. So it's all entangled. When you have a trauma, if dad or mom said something mean to you when you were a little kid because they were in a bad mood and they don't understand the power of their words, the smells in the room, the sounds in the room, the dog, the cat, the television, everything is entangled as a context when mom or dad said that. And that's all recorded in detail you can't imagine. And that's why sometimes takes time to untangle things. And cognitive dissonance always wins because the power ratio is the subconscious 1 million, conscious brain 1. 1 million to 1. And that's why life can become very difficult because you have cognitive dissonance blocking you. I remove the cognitive dissonance, like my cognitive dissonance to money was removed. When it was removed, I now have money. But I never had money for all my life until then, because I had massive cognitive dissonance to money. I got it from my dad, and then I got it later from Kushida Sensei. And so it's a process. All of life is a process. Everything is a process. And the fields control all of it, period.
So to hear you talking like that too, it makes me think of like, because everything you're saying, my mind is filing and very much agreeing with. I don't understand how you're able to remove it technically, but that's maybe another podcast. But
Okay.
it's almost like you're frequency hopping, and then in my brain, I'm seeing it as you are distorting the frequency or redirecting the frequency by removing it somehow. But like my brain is thinking of it as almost like Wi-Fi and that interconnectivity, and then you have to go in and like.
Yeah, so picture this, okay? Picture as an analogy like soap bubbles or little balloons, okay? So those are the photons of light. And this photon, it contains the information that is blocking you from having money, or there's pain. Okay, now it has a frequency. That photon has a frequency. The information contained in it, all of that goes together, and it has a frequency. When you use a destructive interference wave, when you match a destructive interference wave to the photon, when they meet each other, they cancel to zero. That's what destructive interference waves do. They cancel to zero. The trick is matching them. Now, when I match it, that photon goes, pops, and it's gone. It's gone. And then when it's gone, there's a gap. So what goes in its place? Because the universe will not allow a gap. That's where the constructive interference wave, your system of consciousness tells me which frequency to replace that with, to build you up, to make better complexity. So what's going on physically on a molecular level, when I'm working on them, the neural nets in their brain are disassembling, and new neural nets are forming. That's what's going on a physical level. The physical level will catch up in some cases. Let's say I have a guy and his heart isn't it should be operating, we're going to use an arbitrary number at 10, which means 100%. And it's operating at a 6. So I find frequency base, I find why it's only a 6. And I remove all the causes that are keeping the heart down.
And this is
Now,
the physical part of the
the
heart?
physical heart, I'm going to find out why physically through the field, what's wrong. I will remove all the causes associated with keeping that heart subpar. Then I will build the heart up, back up to 100%. And what happens is the physical heart will take about 2 days for it to come up to the new energetic state. So the energetic state precedes the physical state. And I proved that to my wife one time using a rose. What I did was I gave her this beautiful, big, vibrant rose that we picked live at this nice lady's house. Then we had to go to dinner. It was in the afternoon, and my wife's car is black. So she had a little thing of water, and she put the rose in there and left it in the car. And we went for a couple of hours. When we came back, the interior of the car is about 120 degrees, and the rose was annihilated, right? It's just wilted over and it's gone. So we drove home, and she took the rose out, put it on the picnic table. She went off to do whatever. So I just picked up the rose with the little jar of water, and I infused the water with energies, a couple of frequencies, and then set it down. So that was about 6 o'clock at night when I infused the energy. And then when we woke up the next morning, the rose is completely restored and perfect, utterly every petal, whole stem, and it remained perfect for 1 week. So it took the rose several hours, all night long, till the morning, for it to catch up to the new energetic signature. So that's what I do if I have someone when they're hurt with the physical body. If I have a relationship problem, I just remove the hurt and the interference between the two, and families come together, people come together. If I have a big morphic field, I can work with hundreds of people at one time, and they form anytime you see a collective, there's an emergent property created, an emergent consciousness relative to the collective. So I'm able to work in the cloud, the emergent consciousness, and then it's a feed forward, feed backward system, Just like the computer, you can upload and download from the cloud. Same thing. I work in the cloud for the collective. The limitation is it's only relative to the specific question. You understand what I mean by that? If I'm looking at a cloud of 1,000 people, and the common question to them all is, do I have fear of failure? I will clear fear of failure relative to how it shows up in the cloud. Everyone has fear of failure in a different way.
Yes.
That all shows up there. If I clear it there and all the entanglements that show up with it, that feeds down to all of them, and it's cleared. So that's one of my specialties. Yeah.
That is extraordinarily fascinating. You are fascinating to me. I find there are areas that I always have like a little bit of resistance with, but at the same time, I recognize that my belief system is that we are all energy.
Oh, you
right?
are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I believed that for a very, very long time. Like it took me a while to unpack my third, fourth, and fifth programs and be like, wait a second, no. I don't subscribe to the religion aspect that, say, my nuclear family did. And I'm like, wait a second, we have to be all energy. Everything around us is energy, right?
Yeah,
We're breathing, living energy. So when you do talk about these things, and when I do have guests that will talk about some of these areas that certain people might be like, what the people tend to shy away from this kind of conversation, right? They get a little uncomfortable, they don't subscribe to it, that sort of thing. For me, I find myself like going through and like realizing there's a lot of what you say that just kind of resonates within me when you say it as a truth. And then you talked about at the beginning of this podcast, resonance.
Yes.
Right? So
Resonance.
it's all linked together, and I think that your life alone has been really fantastic. Not fantastic's not the right word. I think um, the journey, the pathway that you took, what you're doing now. Like I said earlier, I was privy to a very small bit of a conversation, and I could hear in that individual's tone when they were speaking to you
Uh,
that it was a deep sincerity, a deep,
yeah.
genuine connection
I
between the
know
two
what
of
you were
you.
trying to do because while I was waiting for you, I have my clients from around the world. They'll send me little messages or questions or something's happening. And I think what happened was that's one of the really lovely lady in California, and she's a beautiful spiritual lady. She always sends me lovely messages. I love to hear them every morning. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. All I knew is when I was listening, I'm like, this is not for my ears. But then one could ask, because I'm of the belief that nothing happens in this world without purpose,
That's right. It's
right?
true.
So then I stopped and I asked myself a few times, was I meant to hear
Yeah,
that
probably.
particular snippet of that conversation? This has been a
Yeah,
real treat for me.
the greatest mathematical truth that you can ever know is this: everything from a Planckian spherical unit, which is the smallest known measured unit in the universe, from the smallest to the largest galaxies, for anything, everything is dependently arising and it's dependently ceasing. If you ponder that, everything is dependently arising, dependently ceasing. Once you really start to grasp that, you'll realize there's no such thing as a victim. A victim is impossible, and then that starts to really change your worldview and how you see your life and everything else. Everything is dependently arise. See, like if you guys are watching uh, Mr. Simmons and myself, or Mr. Sims and myself, okay? If you're not here, you can't see us. We don't exist without for you. If you look at the sun and we take away you, there's no sun for you. There is for me, but not for you, which means there's no separation. They're exactly equal. And that's why the old saying, I am that, because you are. There is no separation. That's why I can help you if I can see you or you can hear. I don't care if you're on Mars. It means it's absolutely doesn't mean anything. I can, I. That's the basis of all. And the guy who wrote the mathematics for that, which is peer reviewed, is Nassim Haramein, the great physicist. So
Absolutely
you can find
fascinating.
all of that in great detail. Does that make
So
sense?
everyone else, it does actually make sense for me. And anybody who wants to actually learn more or be able to have a conversation with Dr. Kruhly, you can head over to depthhealing.org.
That's
So
right.
that's depth, DEPTH, healing.org. Dr. Kruhly, you have been a fascinating guest. Thank you so much for your time today
Thank
and
you.
helping me feeling a little bit more enlightened. I'll definitely want to to dig a little deeper, I think.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here. I wish you the very best. For everyone at home, thanks for tuning in, and
Thank
we
you.
will see you next week.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.